Hi everyone. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. It's lovely to see you all. I'm Jane. I'm the membership manager here at Social Enterprise Scotland. If you're not as aware of us, we are the intermediary, the national intermediary and membership body for social enterprises across Scotland. And very simply, our role is to champion all things social enterprise. So it's to promote, support, connect, and represent the sector. As part of that, we host regular sessions that cover a whole range of subjects. Some are topical, some are practical, some are more thematic. And I think we have a bit of a mix of all three today. So just before we start, I'm going to run through the Zoom rules. So if everyone can stay on mute through the presentation, that would be much appreciated. If you want to come in at the end with questions, obviously you can raise a virtual hand or a real hand. As I've said, please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat and ask any questions as we go. We will share the presentation following the meeting, and we'll share Andy's contact details also. Fair warning, we will also have a short survey for you to complete if you don't mind at the end of the session also. And finally, just before we start, we want this to be a safe and welcoming space today. So just to thank you in advance for being kind and respectful of each other's experiences and perspectives. Okay, so some of you may know we ran a pretty popular session earlier this year around being a neuro-inclusive employer, which Andy at Welcome Brain facilitated. So I'm really delighted to welcome him back today to talk to us all about AI and neurodiversity. So Andy, over to you.
Thank you, Jane. Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for coming. Jane did give the fair warning about technical problems, and I'm going to probably have the first of them now as I try and share and present my screen. So just bear with me 1 second while I get this loaded up. Let's see. Okay, there we go. That seems to work okay. And I can still see everybody as well. I'm not just looking at my own head. Okay, so yeah, welcome everybody. I can start now. So yeah, as Jane said, today we're going to be talking about AI and neurodiversity. My name is Andy Williamson and I run Welcome Brain Consulting. We're a neurodiversity, neuroinclusion consultancy. We're based down in Edinburgh. We're a proud social enterprise supporter member. And we work with organizations of all shapes and sizes. Neurodiversity is a really broad umbrella, really broad church. So we help organizations with lots of things from training through to full audits and accreditation, anything to do with neurodiversity, neuroinclusion. We have quite a strong advocacy wing of our organization as well. So we have a load of free materials available. So we have things that can help you hire and recruit better. If you are looking to hire and recruit in a more neuro-inclusive way, we have stuff available for free. So I'd recommend having a look at our website, or you're always welcome to email me. I'm andy@welcomebrain.com. So the focus of what I wanted to talk about today was AI and neurodiversity. But again, as Jane said, so we're going to blend between the sort of the thematic, the philosophical, but a lot of what we're going to be looking at is practical and applied stuff, because in terms of both AI and neurodiversity, there's a lot of sort of terminology and jargon that gets thrown around. But really what actually matters on a day-to-day basis for your organization, for your social enterprise, is dealing with people on a day-to-day basis. And what are the practical side of these things? So with no further ado, let's have a look. So I like to start with a big grandiose statement whenever I do talks like this. So I think the defining challenges for all organizations over the next 10 years is going to be learning how to manage AI and learning how to manage neurodiversity. I think that's not too hyperbolic to say. I think AI, for obvious reasons, is the growth of AI is just exponential. The things it can do, the cost of doing it is dropping dramatically. The adoption is growing dramatically. So if you look at kind of social media sites like Facebook or Instagram, the pace that it took them to get 1 million users is about 10 times how long it took ChatGPT to get 1 million users. So these things are growing incredibly quickly, and people are adopting these things very quickly. My bold statement about neuroinclusion, why I include that in the list of things that are important to know about for the next 10 years, why it's probably going to be the second most important challenge that your organization faces over the next 10 years, is just in terms of pure numbers. Around 15% of the UK population at present is neurodiverse or neurodivergent. So that's sort of 1 in 6 people are neurodivergent at present. But if you look at the statistics around teenagers and young people in Scotland, around 40% of current teenagers in Scotland are either neurodivergent or have some additional support need. So this generation of teenagers, this generation Alpha or Generation Z that are coming into the workplace, they're going to be in the workplace in the next decade, are much more comfortable talking about their own experience of being neurodivergent. They're much more comfortable with demanding things, and they're much more comfortable with the expectation that things change because of their neurodivergent experience. So not only is there going to be more people coming into the workplace that are neurodivergent, there's going to be more consumers that are neurodivergent and are starting to select for businesses that improve the neurodivergent experience. So these two things are social changes and technological changes that are happening, but they're not necessarily threats. They're things that you can embrace. And well, certainly the rise of neuroinclusion is a good thing. And the rise of AI is neutral, but I think you can harness it to be a good thing. We are all either social enterprises or social enterprise supporters. So although I think sometimes we let innovation happen to bigger businesses first and filter down to us as social enterprises, I think the sort of the progressive and the social justice side of neuroinclusion is something that we can definitely be at the forefront of. One of the sort of the core aims of a social enterprise is to make workplaces work for everybody. Neurodivergent people in general have incredible skills. The statistic I always throw around is that 50% of employees at NASA are neurodivergent. NASA actively seeks out neurodivergent employees because they bring incredible skills to the workplace. They're often amazing at pattern seeking. They're amazing in terms of thinking outside the box and innovation. And so big businesses and big organizations like NASA are seeking out neurodivergent people. So they have incredible skills, but they're being lost to the job marketplace at the moment. So if you're autistic, for example, you're about 5 to 6 times more likely to be unemployed than if you are neurotypical. So there's incredibly high barriers to entry and progression once people do enter the job market for neurodivergent people. So AI comes along, and AI can actually solve a lot of problems when it comes to neurodiversity. That's what we're going to talk about today, is specifically what problems can they solve and how can they do it. There's a lot of hype around AI. And everybody at the moment is trying to get rich quick by selling AI courses, or this is what you need to do, or AI products. It's a bit of a gold rush. And, you know, as they say about gold rushes, everybody wants to be the people selling the shovels during a gold rush. And a little bit that's where AI is at the moment. I think there's a lot of snake oil people selling AI tools. So you do need to be suspicious and sort of maybe a bit cynical. But AI isn't just hype. AI is actually fantastic at the way it's able to reduce friction in the workplace and the way it can amplify talent. So I don't always like talking about neurodivergence as a deficit, but a lot of the times the workplace currently focuses on the deficits around neurodivergent people, and AI can smooth out a lot of those barriers. Something I always say when I'm talking to organizations, there's an amazing psychologist in America who talks about the difference between neurodivergent people and neurotypical people as being a double empathy problem. That effectively neurodivergent people and neurotypical people speak different languages. And what AI allows people to do actually is translate across that barrier. So it allows neurotypical people to understand neurodivergent people better and vice versa. So that's what we're gonna look at today. So why does this matter? Well, as we said, neurodivergent people face barriers at work, and barriers at work that harm neurodivergent people harm workplaces for everybody. So all the things we're going to talk about today, productivity tools, meeting tools, things like that, they all help neurotypical people as well. So a neuro-inclusive organization is a good organization, and all the tools that we're going to talk about today will benefit neurotypical people as well inside organizations. There's just been, it was released in the last couple of months, a big study by MIT in America, and they studied, it was a longitudinal study of neuro-inclusive workplaces. So they studied 4 companies that had neuro-inclusive working practices for the last 10 years. These aren't small companies. This is Microsoft, Walmart, SAP, and EY. So across different sectors, but they have all implemented for 10 years now neuro-inclusive working programs, all vary slightly, but either pilot programs or across the board programs. And what they found was that their metrics improved across the board. So the retention rates in their neuro-inclusive programs were more than 90%. So if you have these neuro-inclusive hiring programs and retention and neuro-inclusive work programs, you're more likely to retain your neurodivergent employees. They saved $1 million annually as a result of innovations that were made by neurodivergent employees. Now, I don't think that we as social enterprises are necessarily working with Microsoft-style budgets. Maybe somebody in here is. But what is clear is that actually the savings, I mean, the specific case that Microsoft cite when they talk about their savings annually is that they had a neurodivergent employee who saw one of these work processes and said, I can see a shortcut. I can see how we can, this process that's supposed to take 2 days, I see how we can do it in 20 minutes. And that is one of the tangible examples of what a neurodivergent person can bring to your team. And again, these benefits extend to the entire teams. So in the slightly sort of businessy jargon of an MIT study, they said neuroinclusion is an organizational effectiveness magnifier. So what you can use neuroinclusion as a policy to do is use it to shine a light on your organization, on your processes, on your policies. What are your work from home policies like? What are your work flexibility processes like? Approach it from a neuroinclusion lens and see how this benefits everybody. And the good news is that AI tools make it easier to be neuroinclusive, and they also make it cheaper to be neuroinclusive. So I'm going to go through the tools. I'm going to talk about a lot of these. I'm going to share all of these afterwards, so you don't have to worry about writing it down. I'm going to share all this afterwards. But we're going to look mostly at an organizational level today. What can you do at an organizational level to help neurodivergent employees and to create a neurodiverse workplace? If you are neurodivergent, a lot of these tools are going to be just useful for you in your day-to-day life. If you're a solopreneur, or if you are a neurodivergent person who's running a social enterprise, these tools are going to be useful. I consider myself to be neurotypical, and I use most of these on a daily basis. So these tools are beneficial to everybody. So yeah, with no further ado, I'm going to get into it then. So the first thing we're going to look at then is tools for writing and communication. A lot of neurodivergent people, particularly say, for example, people who are dyslexic, they may struggle with writing just on a day-to-day basis, whether it's writing reports or writing emails or things like that. Some neurodivergent people may struggle to interpret tone. I know I've heard that complaint a lot. So when they receive an email, they might say, this is difficult to understand the tone of this email. Am I in trouble? What is this actually asking for? AI is amazing. And really what AI does at its core, particularly sort of LLMs, large language models like ChatGPT or something like that, they are effectively translation systems that translate between humans with all of our horrible ways of talking and our nuance and our social norms and all of that. They turn it into computer language, and then they can turn it back into human language. So that's where ChatGPT is amazing, is you can feed it in a bit of language and say, can you put this in the language, make it more formal, please? So if someone might struggle to pick up on tone in an email, I mean, I've used it when I've received a complicated email. I've copied the text of an email into ChatGPT and said, what are the action items from this email? Or what is this person actually saying in this email? And ChatGPT can do that for you. So if you have problems with things like phrasing, if you have problems with spelling or tone, understanding and writing in a clear way, or just having text paralysis, how do you even start? Then there's tools. So Grammarly is one that's been around for a while. It predates the sort of the explosion of this Gen AI in the last 3 years. Grammarly is really good at proofreading your text for spelling. It can shorten sentences to make them more coherent. There's a free version available, and that's a good point to mention, actually, is that a lot of what we talk about today, there are free versions available. So we're not talking about big software budgets for this. There's a free version of Grammarly available. I use the free version. You can pay, and it's always trying to get you to pay for the more elaborate version. But Grammarly is a great place to start. You can use it as a Chrome plugin if you use Google Chrome, so it can check your emails, or if you're working in Google Docs, you can check that. WordTune, this is the one that I've taken these screenshots from before, is a really advanced sort of translation app. If you type in what I have on the left here, if you type in, I have some exciting news to share with you, if you say, I want to translate that, you can either rewrite it and it'll just paraphrase it for you, or you can select that icon that looks like a briefcase or a satchel, formal, and it will put it into formal language for you. So it said, I'm thrilled to let you know that we have some new developments to share. So that's kind of LinkedIn friendly. Everybody talks like that on LinkedIn. Nobody talks like a normal human on LinkedIn. So you have to put it in formal language. And you can also click to shorten. You just click the icon. If you say, this is too long, I want to shorten it. And you can click that icon and it just shortens your text. Obviously, you need to proofread it to check that it's not changed it horrendously and changed it to something offensive or changed the meaning or something like that. but it's a really simple free tool that you can just play around with, and it's really useful and really quick if you want to change what you're saying. And you can also use it to translate what other people have said as well. So if somebody's written something in a formal way, you can rewrite it into a more accessible way. ChatGPT. I use ChatGPT every single day. You do have to be careful if you're working in a bigger enterprise. Some organizations don't like you copy and pasting sensitive information into ChatGPT. But what I use it for is just to write copy. Sometimes I'm halfway through drafting an email and I said, this doesn't make sense to me, so I don't understand how the person that's receiving it is going to interpret it. And I will copy the text in and say, can you just finish this off? Or I'm halfway through an idea. Or you can brain dump into ChatGPT and say, can you do this? So I use ChatGPT every time I'm trying to make something sound formal or trying to make it sound professional. I'll use ChatGPT. Notion AI is very similar. I think we're going to talk about Notion AI a little bit later. But the most entry-level way that you can be using AI in your organization is by using one of these tools around writing and communication. For neurodivergent people, they're probably using it already within your organization. But if you do have company policies around safety and security, you'll want to vet these and make sure that you have one that has been okayed either by your IT team or by an IT consultant as being okay. But this is definitely where I would start if you're interested in dipping a toe into using AI. It's something like ChatGPT or WordTune to improve your writing or to improve your understanding of writing. Next, then, executive function. This is the one I think is most exciting. This is the one I think that has the most ramifications for neurodivergent people. Again, I don't like to talk necessarily about deficits, but for neurodivergent people, struggles around executive function are a real problem. So they struggle with things like task prioritization, time management, task switching. They can often get overwhelmed. And the way I see AI in this respect is it operates like an exoskeleton. So your prefrontal cortex is where executive function happens. If you don't have a developed sense of executive function, the AI can fill in that gap and operate like an external or an outsourced prefrontal cortex. And this is where I think neurodivergent people can really, really thrive if they're using good tools, good AI tools to help them with their executive function. My favorite one by miles on this list is Goblin. Goblin.tools is the website, but this is where I've taken all the information from. Goblin is amazing because it was built specifically for neurodivergent people. So if you go on the website on Goblin.tools, it says this is for people who have ADHD or people who are autistic. So it's explicitly designed with this cohort of people in mind. And it's all free. And what it has is basically, like I said, it has this sort of prefrontal cortex of tasks that you can get it to do. So some of these things I'm going to walk through may seem very familiar to you in terms of your daily dilemmas. But the first one, the screen I have on the left here, the screenshot I have on the left here is the judge. Am I misreading the tone of this? So you can tell this is built by neurodivergent people. Because what you do is you copy, for example, an email there. Am I misreading the tone of this? And you click on the judge button and it tells you what the tone of this email is. And it can also suggest a response. So it can help you to develop a response to an email that matches the tone that that's been sent. So if somebody's struggling with rejection sensitive dysphoria, they can copy this in and see, okay, actually, maybe this email wasn't as judgmental as it might have initially seemed. The next one is the estimator tool. Tell me how long this is going to take me. So you can type in a task. As an example, yesterday, I typed in a household task. How long would it take me to pack up my entire house and clean it so an Airbnb guest could come and stay in here? Sometimes we do that in our house. And it broke it down into tasks. Okay, so cleaning up this room, this room, this room is going to take you this long. Moving all of the stuff is going to take you this long. You can then immediately click another button and it can make it into a to-do list for you based on time. So this chunk of time is half an hour. This is what you should be doing. The consultant, if people struggle with decision making, you can put in there a dilemma that you're facing and click give advice. And what it will do is it will give you the pros and cons of each of the two sides of this dilemma. And then you can click give advice and it will give a ruling. So it can say, actually, the pros of this outweigh the cons of this. So if you struggle with decision paralysis or something like this, you can use this tool and it's absolutely fantastic. And let me see what the one on the right. The one on the right is, I think we've mentioned it already, but it's the idea of brain dumping. So if you just say, well, I've got this project, here's what I'm broadly thinking for it. You can just write nonsensical brain dump. You don't have to worry about punctuation or spelling or anything like that. It can be just a stream of consciousness in there, and it will turn it into coherent tasks for you, siloed tasks. So say, here's what I think you're trying to do. Here are the tasks. And again, you can turn that into a to-do list, and it can estimate the time it will take for each one. So this is the tool that has been most clearly designed for the neurodivergent community, because this is based on the problems that neurodivergent people have told me they face in the workplace. And if you're managing a team that includes neurodivergent people, I think this should definitely be in your arsenal of things that you recommend. And again, I consider myself neurotypical, but this is one that I use quite regularly because it does exactly what you need it to do. Sometimes you say, well, here's my broad idea. I need this into an action plan, and it can do that for you. And it's pretty good at understanding what you're doing. So Motion and Todoist are also really good tools for creating to-do lists. Todoist is really good because you create a to-do list and it can learn from your behavior as well. So it says, actually, maybe you're more productive in the mornings. So I'm going to set your tasks for you to do in the mornings, and we'll have lighter tasks in the afternoon. Todoist might also say, well, I noticed that you complete the shorter tasks first. So from now on, I'm going to start giving you the shorter tasks at the top of your to-do list. I'm going to cascade it like that. So Todoist is really good because it learns from you. So the fashion for kind of trendy open plan offices, I think, is dying down a little bit now because the WeWork style big open plan offices, maybe with a table tennis table over in the corner, it just doesn't help productivity. And I think the organizations are realizing this now. Hot desking as a fashion, I think, is dying. I think hot desking is terrible because for people who like regularity and consistency, hot desking means that you spend the first at least half an hour of your day finding where to work and how to work rather than actually doing your work. So I think hot desking is dying away a little bit. But in a lot of sort of physical workplaces, office environments, there are a lot of issues around sensory overload and hypersensitivity. Thankfully, headphones are now becoming more common in offices. They're more common when you see people around now wearing headphones. So I think there's an understanding that sort of sensory issues are very real, and the offices and organizations now have a duty of care to actually help people with their sensory needs. And as an aside, you are legally entitled to protection under the Equality Act if you do need headphones. So your employer has to pay for them if you do need them. If your employer can't pay for them, then there's the Access to Work scheme, although that is very backed up at the moment. But that counts as a reasonable adjustment if you do have the need for headphones. So that's something your employer should be doing. And there are some really advanced ones. I didn't include them on this because I thought they would be like sort of too far beyond, but you can buy really advanced headphones now that use AI to dynamically block out sounds. So they can respond to exterior noise and create sort of like an equal and opposite noise to block out sounds. Those are always worth having a look at. But if you want tools to use in your office or tools that you can use at your particular workstation within your office, these are the three that I identified. The first two, Focus at Will and Brain.fm, are around sounds and noise and music. So if you do listen to headphones at work, the first one is from Focus at Will, this one on the left here, this screenshot on the left here. That's really cool because what you do, you go on it and it asks you a few questions about what type of work you do, what type of music you do like to listen to, and it creates sounds to play in your headphones that match your level of productivity. So it uses AI to generate music or sounds or whatever sort of noises you need to help you concentrate. Brain FM operates very similarly, but it is less based on your own specific needs. So it just creates sort of playlists that are longer like that. And then the last tool here is SaneBox. SaneBox works with emails as an email productivity manager. I know a lot of people who get overwhelmed when they're working just with the number of emails that come in, including a lot of them that are spam. What SaneBox does is it plugs into, if you use Google Workspace or Outlook or something like that, it automatically filters out your emails and creates different folders in your, so the emails don't always just land straight in your inbox. It will filter them out into separate sub emails in email folders that it creates for you. so that you just don't have that overwhelming amount of emails coming in. Your inbox is only for important messages. And again, because it's AI, you can train it. So if somebody sends you an email and it gets filtered into not important folder, and when you check it, you say, actually, this is important, it will learn, and future emails from that person will be sent to important emails. So it's dynamic and it learns with you. And as I say, the good thing is you don't have to create a separate email for it. It just plugs automatically in. So I use Google Workspace as part of my work, and the same box would plug right into that. You don't have to create any additional tech for it. So that's really useful if you just find yourself getting overwhelmed by the sheer volume of emails coming in and you struggle to get into that sort of deep work state. Again, neurodivergent people who struggle with sort of switching between tasks might find that they get an email and they click across to that email, and then they end up reading all their other emails, and it's about 20 minutes before they go back to the task that they're originally working on. Meetings and note-taking. Well, we have a good example of that today, actually, because Jayne is using her note-taking technology in this meeting. So I know a lot of people who are neurodivergent who struggle with meetings, and that's one of the biggest things we work on when we're working with organizations. I mean, meetings in general, everybody hates meetings. They're never as efficient as they could be. As a takeaway, something free you should always do is circulate an agenda to a meeting in advance if you're having a work meeting. If you're not circulating an agenda, then it means the meeting, you've already lost control of it. You should be making sure that everybody who has an invite should have an invite, and you're planning on needing everybody to speak who does get invited. But that doesn't happen. The problem then in meetings for neurodivergent people is if they're struggling to take notes and listen to the meeting, they might struggle after the meeting finishes to recall what was actually said in the meeting. Meetings can be very badly run, and sometimes meetings end without action items being sort of very clearly stated. That always happens, and it's very frustrating. For neurodivergent people in meetings, often there's performance pressure. If they know that they've got to speak later, they'll be thinking about the anxiety around having to speak rather than focusing on what's being said in the meeting. So these tools, and particularly Otter AI, I really recommend Otter AI. They're a real godsend for neurodivergent people and for neurotypical people as well, because what they do is they transcribe emails. They transcribe meetings. You can use it as a companion in your Zoom meeting or in your Microsoft Teams meeting. It will transcribe the meeting for you. It can send that out automatically to all of the attendees. The attendees can then interact with it after the meeting and say, okay, I know we talked about this. What was the action item that we took from this? You can literally talk to the app on your phone and say, what was the action item that Brian talked about? I don't know, the birthday cake or something like that. And it will go through the meeting and find out what that was and message it to you. So it saves you as a neurodivergent person having to think, well, am I being annoying, emailing everybody and asking them what the action items were again? You can either read through the transcript or you can ask Otter AI and converse with it. And similarly, you can use it to help you plan the next meeting. So these are 3 screenshots I took from Otter AI. Of the meetings and note-taking AI devices, the Otter is probably the most advanced and the one I think is the best. So you can see it automatically will give you action items from your meeting, which then you can check off or you can allocate to different people in your team. Again, you can use your phone here to say, hey, Otter, what are my action items from last week? And it will go through. It can also take from different meetings as well. So if you want to say, tell me all of my action items, what I remember I had a deadline for Tuesday, what was that? And it can search through all your meetings and say, well, this was what you had due for Tuesday. So it's really smart at engaging with all that material. And the transcription from Otter AI is really detailed. So it's about 95% plus accuracy, which is not true of all transcription technologies. They are getting better, but there's still some ropey ones out there. As I say, we're not transcription, so it's 95% accuracy. That is that you can be sort of reassured with that. So again, this is something you can do at an organizational level, is implement using Otter AI. You don't have to ask if anybody's neurodivergent and would benefit from this, because I think this improves team performance across the board. Something like Otter AI, because it removes that friction around what was the action item, what did we actually say. People can actually listen and engage in meetings without worrying about taking notes. And I think that's a much more helpful way of running a meeting. Let's see what's next. Okay, so tools for neurodivergent founders, solopreneurs. I know that there's a lot of small business people in the social enterprise community, a lot of one-man, one-woman bands. I run Welcome Brain, so I know the struggle of running a business sort of as one person. And I know particularly if you're competing with bigger organizations, the struggle to sort of look professional and to sort of manage that business that looks like a big business from the outside can be very real. So as I mentioned, ChatGPT, I use it all the time. I think ChatGPT knows more about me than my wife does, the amount I sort of talk to it and tell it stuff. So it's really good now at remembering projects we've worked on before. So the ChatGPT I use is the 4.0. It's the paid subscription, and I think it's absolutely worth it because I've effectively created my own mini GPT. So I can ask it about previous projects I've worked on. I say, hey, remember that project we worked on with this organization? Can you help me tailor it, an idea for this organization? It can draw back from its memory and it remembers stuff about you. Again, you do have to be careful about sharing sensitive information. But if you can train one to work based on your organization, it makes you much more efficient, and it effectively functions like a personal assistant. The one real downside that ChatGPT is a large language model. So it means it's really good at language. So it can speak really well, but there's nothing really going on behind the eyes with ChatGPT. So it doesn't really know anything. All it can do is do a really good facsimile of pretending it knows things. So I've trialed this. I didn't use it, but I said, can you write me a report? I used the ChatGPT deep research. So can you write me a report about AI and neurodiversity in the workplace? And it wrote this amazing report. It was absolutely beautiful. I said, oh, this is absolutely perfect. And it was great until I went to check the sources. And every single one of the sources it gave me was made up. So I Googled them in. These were academic looking, journal sounding resources that it was using on websites and everything, but not one of them was real. And I asked it about it afterwards, and it confessed. We had a little bit of a Spanish Inquisition style interrogation, and it confessed that everything it had told me was totally made up, and it wasn't real. And it apologized, but I asked it to do it properly with real research, and it couldn't do it. So that's why I recommend, if you're going to do any sort of research for your organization, I would recommend using Perplexity. That is the middle one here that I've screenshotted. They have a deep research function. I think that they still give you a couple of deep researches a month for free. And I found amazing results from that. So you can be very detailed, and it searches the web, it searches academic journals, it searches all sorts, anything that it can access. And it can give you incredibly detailed, incredibly professional results. The actual outcome of the results aren't written as well as if ChatGPT had written them, but they are real. So if you're looking to do any research for your organization, you can be incredibly detailed with that. You can search things on competitors, you can search things on your industry, you can search things on, well, anything really. And Perplexity can do really, really high level research. Again, this is not just for neurodivergent people to use, this is for anybody to use, but I've found this to be extremely useful. Again, you do have to take it with a pinch of salt, in the same way that if you'd hired a researcher to write it, you wouldn't just take it as verbatim correct. But this is providing a lot of time saving when it comes to research. And it's at the moment, I think they say it's operating at effectively a PhD level. So it's like hiring a PhD researcher, but for free. For producing images, again, for social media, for LinkedIn, I mean, you'll have seen all of the AI images on LinkedIn, on social media. If you need to make something for a post, Canva is amazing. I made this presentation on Canva. I use Canva every single day. Canva AI is really, really, really simple to use. It has very simple AI stuff. Like if you copy somebody's logo into a presentation, you can do background remover. So it just has their logo and you can move it around. That's very basic AI. But you can do free AI online generator. So the example they've given here is if you want a picture of sunrise over snow-capped mountains, you can just type that in and it will create you a series of images that match that description that you can then use for your social media posts. It still looks a bit dodgy when you're doing people. They haven't quite got people looking as real as possible. And the images do sometimes look a little bit AI. If you want sunrise over a snow-capped mountain, they do sometimes look a little bit AI, but they are absolutely fantastic at just creating images quickly. What I found Canva is quite good at doing as well, and what ChatGPT has been quite good at doing is creating graphs as well. So I've used ChatGPT to create graphs. What I've actually done is copy in a little bit of a report and said, is there a good graph that would represent this text well? And it says, well, I'd recommend either a pie chart or a bar graph, and you can sort of lead it through and then it will produce it for you. So that's really good at image generating. And Canva can also do that as well. But again, just for making things look professional, for making you look like a bigger organization that has kind of maybe a social media person or a graphic designer, it's very good at doing that. And I know social media can be one of the hardest parts of being a solopreneur. And so AI has the capacity to make that really, really easy for you. Again, check everything before you post it on social media because sometimes it has a mind of its own. Okay, we can't talk about AI without talking about ethics. I've sort of hinted at it a few times, particularly when it comes to inclusion and boundaries. So as just a simple example of where AI can be really detrimental to neurodivergent people is in hiring. A lot of big companies in particular use AI CV filters now as part of their hiring programs. So the AI will, filter out the vast majority of CVs and only send a select few through to the hiring manager. What that does actually in effect is it filters out a lot of people with atypical job histories, which overskews for neurodivergent people. So that actually is a sort of a biased barrier against neurodivergent people when you use tools like that. So what you have to remember, this is very important, is that AI is a tool. AI is a tool to help you in your work. It's not something that does the work instead of you. And this is where you have to be careful. So all of the tools I've talked about today are called generative AI. So they create things for you. The next phase in AI is agentic AI. So using AI agents to do things. What that means is you can have an AI agent say, I want you to, every time somebody submits an inquiry form on our website, I want you to look at their website, scrape some information, and write them a tailored response to their email and email it to them about our services. Agentic AI can do that now, and it can be a really useful tool, but it's very dangerous because you're using AI to replace a person, often with very little oversight. So this is where the danger is that you say, well, perfect, I can automate all these parts of my business without having to look at it. But that's where effectively you're letting AI just take control of your business. And that's where it gets dangerous because you don't know what AI is going to see. You have no control over what the AI says or what the AI does. And it can still go rogue. We've all seen Terminator. We know what happens if we leave technology to go unchecked. So that's a very real danger. So you should still be thinking about AI as a tool to help you in your organization or to help the experience of neurodivergent people with an organization, not to replace people. And we're still at that stage at the moment. So use AI to assist, don't replace people. We should also remember the social model, not the medical model, when it comes to using AI in organization. What I mean by that is it's the social model of disability, not the medical model of disability. The social model of disability or of approaching neuroinclusion is that it's not the individual that is broken. It's the way that society interacts with them. That's the problem. So neurodivergent people struggle at work, not because they're broken, but because the work isn't set up to help them thrive. The medical model says the person is broken and we should try and fix the person. That's an outdated way of looking at things. And there's a danger just from a sort of intellectual or philosophical point of view when we're using AI in these organizations that we revert back to the medical model. And we say, well, look, there's an AI that fixes your disability or your deficits. There's an AI that fixes it. So the onus is off us as an organization to now be accommodating to you. I don't understand why you have this problem. Why can't you just use AI to fix it? There's a danger of switching that way. We still must remember that there's a social model and that we want individuals within our organization to thrive and that the tools are there to help people thrive. And that's what we should remember as we're moving forward with using AI in our organizations. Again, we need to make sure that we use transparency and trust. So again, there's a danger if you as a manager went into an organization and said, I attended this absolutely amazing talk last week from this guy called Andy, and he told me all of these tools that we're going to use. You, in particular, you, employee X, you need to start using Goblin in your work, because what that does is it becomes very accusatory. And the person might think, why? I've disclosed that I'm neurodivergent to you at all. So what you would need to do in that instance is say, look, I attended this amazing talk from this guy, Andy, and he suggested these tools that help us as an organization. He said that Goblin, for example, can help us with productivity and time management and estimate how long tasks. We're all going to use this, or I recommend all of us using this, or this is now permitted in our suite of apps that we're going to use within our organization. I'm not singling any person out individually if I'm doing that. So you have to be careful not to be accusative and not necessarily to to be opaque. You should be very transparent about why you're introducing or recommending these AI tools. And also, people still have the reflexive response when you say we're going to be using AI tools to say, well, am I working myself out of a job? If my manager tells me we're going to be using more AI in the organization, is this the death knell for me within the organization? You have to make sure that that's not clear. Look, we're going to be using AI as tools. We're not going to be replacing any individuals. This is going to be helping us do our job better and be more productive. And then the final one, and the one that I think bears saying at every single talk like this, or every time we talk about neurodiversity, is there should be nothing done to neurodivergent people that neurodivergent people don't contribute to. So if you have neurodivergent people within your organization, include them. You need to co-create with them. So if you're implementing policies around using AI, you need to involve neurodivergent people in this, because you shouldn't be legislating for neurodivergent people without having their input. That's a really important thing to bear in mind. And if you're not talking to the neurodivergent people in your organization about neurodiversity, then you should be. And that applies not just to AI, that applies to everything across the board. Okay, so how do we get started on this? I've given you some tools, but how do you actually get started? Again, I think you should start by involving your team. Speaking to your team and say, I tended to talk about AI. There's some really interesting productivity tools going on. How can we get started? What are the problems that we actually face in our organizations? You can split it thematically like I did today. Like, what are some of the problems that we have in meetings at work? What are some of the problems we have around emails? What do we have problems around productivity or overstimulation at work? Break it down like that. Speak to your team and say, what are the problems that we face? You shouldn't just be implementing AI for the sake of implementing AI. It's a tool to help solve problems. So that's where you should be talking to your team and saying, what's the actual pain point? Because there's a lot of people who will sell AI solutions to you that aren't problems that need to be solved. There's no shortage of that online, but you need to work out what the problem is first and then find the solution. And then try a free demo. A lot of these tools, most of the tools I've shared today have at least a free demo, if not just being free tools in general. Try it for a month, see what you think. Is this actually useful? There's always going to be a little bit of a lag while people get used to it and start using it effectively, but give yourself a decent period of time to work with AI. Speak to your team as you're working with AI and saying, is this working? Is this actually productive? But give it time to bed in and people get used to working with it and interacting with the other parts of your organization. Once you've done that, you can say, well, actually, this did work for us. We're going to go for the paid version. Don't go full in on the paid version and then say, well, actually, this was a disaster. This has cost us money. AIs are useless. Or don't do the other thing and try something for 2 weeks and say, well, actually, this created too many problems with the other parts of our business, because that's not enough time for you to trial a new system properly. You need to create a support space and feedback loops. Again, that involves talking to your team, and particularly talking to the neurodivergent people in your team. So create a support space and say, once a week, we're going to meet and say, how is this working? Again, in general, I don't like an open door policy. Every manager likes to say, well, I've got an open door. Anybody can come and speak to me at any point about this. But that is the most passive way of being an active manager. It puts all of the onus on the employee to come and find you and seek you out and talk to you. Schedule in some regular time. Say, every Monday morning, we're going to talk about this new AI and how's this working. Or we're going to, every all hands meeting, we're going to schedule 15 minutes to talk about the AI. Create those feedback loops. AI is developing so fast that if you find a piece of technology that is imperfect in one particular way, you might find that there's another piece of technology available that actually is better in the way that you need it to be. So create feedback loops and iterate. And remember, perfect is the enemy of good. So you've just got to try it. There's an amazing saying from Benjamin Disraeli. He says, the most dangerous strategy is to jump a chasm in 2 leaps. So when it comes to using AI, it's just about trying it. Give it a go. Don't assume that it's going to be perfect right off the bat. Try it. See if it makes things better. See if it makes things better. It doesn't have to make things perfect, just better. And again, you can try it, and if it doesn't work, you can try something else. It's not the end of the world. Nothing is irreversible. So give it a go. I think you'll find that adopting it and using it, you get used to it very quickly. And then quite soon you'll find that you weren't able to live without it. And you'll say, what was I doing all those analog pre-AI years? That's certainly how I feel about ChatGPT in particular. And to finish up then, to sort of summate what I've said, is that neuro-inclusion is a business advantage. There's big companies that have produced a lot of data showing that. So take away the AI side of today. Your organization should be moving towards neuro-inclusion. As we said, in 10 years, there's going to be 3 times as many neurodivergent people in the workplace and in society. So you're going to need to adjust for these people anyway. AI lowers barriers for neurodivergent people when it's used well. When it's used badly, it can actually higher or raise the barriers to neurodivergent people. So when AI is used well, it can help neurodivergent people thrive in your organization. It can help you hire neurodivergent people better. It can help neurodivergent people to operate better within your organization. And as I always say, this is not a neuroinclusion principle. This is not an AI principle. This is a universal principle. But success is what happens when people work the way they work best. If you give people the conditions to work in the way that they want to work, they are more likely to thrive and more likely to achieve success for you and for your organization. So I saw a few things come in the chat. I haven't been able to read what is in the chat. We can talk about that in a sec. I hope it's not all heckling and saying that I'm doing a rubbish job, but we can answer the questions in a sec. But as a sort of prompter question for anybody who feels like they might want to ask a question, are you using any AI tools already in your organization? What problems can AI solve for you based on what we've talked about today? What problems has AI already solved for you? And then what limitations, what difficulties have you faced in using AI in your organization, particularly, again, when it comes to neuroinclusion and working with neurodivergent people within your organization? So that is everything I have to say. As I say, I'm going to send all those slides around, so you'll have all the list of the tools that I recommended. And I'll send through just a little resource list as well with some recommendations. But I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm now open to questions. But thank you very much.
Okay, thanks very much, Andy. A lot of ground to cover, and I realise we're quite far into the session. There are quite a lot of questions in the chat, and I don't know if anyone else wants to come in addition to that. Maddie, I know that you're, I think, is it Wi-Fi issues for you at the minute? Do you want me to just read through some of your questions?
Yeah, I mean, I'm all right without the camera on.
Right.
But yeah, I've been popping them in the chat as well, because as an ADHDer, if I don't write them down, I forget them, which is useful. I think yeah, there's a couple of one thing I wasn't clear of from the beginning is obviously neurodiversity is such a wide range. Includes brain injuries, mental health issues, dyslexia, Tourette's, as well as autism and ADHD, with understanding whether it seemed to me like you were mostly talking about autistic people, but I wanted to clarify that. I think in terms of using the tools, one of my two key concerns really. One is around data, going both ways really. I mean, pretty much all the data we handle on participants and clients constitutes sensitive data under GDPR, because we're always working with marginalized people. Therefore, even keeping their emails constitutes sensitive data. So I wondered if you had any thoughts and responses from that, because I think, particularly for some neurodivergent people, it might not be very clear, what is okay to use these things for and what isn't. But also the other way, obviously, my broader concern, I actually used to be a musician, so the use of artist data and things like that, where these tools sit on those sorts of issues. I have more questions. One of the biggest challenges I've tried using ChatGPT. It just seems to be, all of these tools seem to be how to get neurodivergent people to sound more neurotypical. And for someone who's got a lot of trauma coming from masking, that actually really doesn't sit well with me. And I'm wondering if there are ways these tools can actually be, let's actually embrace the social model. What can, depending on what we're talking about, what can holistic or neurotypical people actually do with these tools, rather than all the effort and energy and weight being on how to get us to sound more normal, which is, old school medical model, deficit model, not social model. Sorry, I told you there was a few questions, but they are all in the chat as well.
Thanks, Maddie. Andy, do you want to, because this is not my area of expertise, so I will hand just straight back to you.
Thanks, Maddie. Thanks for those questions. I'll rattle through the answers so we have some time, but I'm going to try and I'll do it in reverse order. Yeah, I think that in terms of, I think ChatGPT is as much a tool for actually helping neurotypical people communicate effectively with neurodivergent people as it is the other way around. Often when we run trainings about communication in the workplace, the conclusion we draw is it's actually better to communicate in a way more like a neurodivergent person, in terms of being very direct and clear and filtering out a lot of the sort of the fluff that neurotypical people often use when they write emails. So I think that ChatGPT is as much a tool for translation the other way as it is for sort of making, as you said, making neurodivergent people sound more neurotypical. I think that that's true. Yeah, in terms of musicians and rights around that, that's a whole controversial issue that I'm not going to get into. But yeah, I think that that's a really difficult situation. Your other questions were around. I can't remember. Sorry. It was.
So just quickly, I did pop it in the slot. I've actually got, because I got into it with ChatGPT as you did, and I have. I'm happy to share it if you're interested. I have an extensive chat summary where it explicitly said it was unable to communicate with me in the way I wanted it to as an autistic person, because it was extensively trained on neurotypical language models, and that was the only way it was trained to communicate. And it explicitly told me it could not communicate in the way that I wanted it to, because that was not the data it was trained on.
Well, I would love to see that if you
like
wouldn't mind sharing that. Yeah,
it's been like quite a rational response as well, from what I understand about how ChatGPT was built. You know, it's built on majority data, and this is where a lot of the problems with bias around cultural bias and racism, etc., come in, which is another side issue I have with using AI. Every time I've tried to do it, the racism, the sexism, the misogyny, because of the data it's built on, it is inevitably embedded. But yeah, so
yeah.
I went into it hoping that it would do what you suggested. I was like, great, it's logical, it's rational, it's going to communicate in a way I feel comfortable with. And after long arguments, you know, it eventually admitted that, no, actually, I can't do that because I wasn't trained on autistic language models. I was trained on holistic language models. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've just seen it pop up as well, the safety question. I think, knowing the work Amadou, we've worked together, I think you probably have similar issues to us, that we're dealing with a lot of sensitive data, and even to just record in a you know, I do use Otter AI and it's passworded to me, but still, you know, how we put that into our GDPR policies, considering it is considered highly sensitive data.
Yep. Yeah, and you do have to be careful. Everything you put in there has to be anonymized. If you're using ChatGPT, I mean, I probably wouldn't use ChatGPT with sensitive data, even if it was anonymized. But yeah,
no, I'm talking about the, you know, even things like Otter AI, where it is passworded and things like that. Yeah, reading out emails. If you're ordering your emails, how much of the data in that is the AI retaining? What's the GDPR implications of that?
Yeah, I mean, so let's see, it was Sarah posted that as well. Yeah, so if you are dealing with sensitive data, probably the same box one is not going to be one that you can use, because I just don't think you can trust the data security element of that one. Again, I mean, if you have an IT team at work, I know each organization has specific rules around the apps that it's using, so it's best running through that. But again, I think you do have to be careful around sensitive information. And same box, I would not give access to sensitive emails if you're operating in that environment. Absolutely would not.
I have a quick question, please.
Yes.
And was that Nina?
Yes. Hi. Really interesting presentation, by the way. And you might also say it's similar in terms of it depends on your IT department. But I work in qualifications, so I put people through their SVQ qualifications. So people that are writing assignments, etc. So our biggest, well, not our biggest concern, obviously, because it's AI, but our current concern, obviously, is plagiarism is the big one, how we kind of introduce it for that. So out of the writing tools that you suggested, are there any that you think currently are the best for that kind of work, people writing assignments and stuff to safeguard against plagiarism and then just being used to write everything? Or
so do you mean how can you catch students who are plagiarizing?
Yeah, or so you gave a few examples. There was Grammarly, WordTune, a couple of different. Are there any that are maybe a bit better for, you know, not writing an entire piece of work for someone or something?
Oh, I see. Okay, so ones that you could sort of legitimately use
Yes.
rather than just plagiarizing. Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, it's not necessarily an AI tool, but I used to work in education. So the best, it's a website, but it's Hemingway app is the one I used to use with a lot of my students for writing because it teaches them how to edit their work really effectively, which is good then because it means they have to actually input all of the information themselves. But then Grammarly is just like an absolute lifesaver because again, that's not plagiarism, but it can tell you if you have the pro version, it can tell you how to restructure your sentences as well. So you kind of learn along with it. So it is actually a teaching tool rather than just a sort of an automatically doing it for you tool.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I would imagine most of the students are using ChatGPT. And there is some legitimate use of ChatGPT, like if you need to rephrase something, you just can't do it. But the problem is it's generative, so it's actually, you know, it's writing the material for you. So yeah, but the ones I mentioned, Grammarly and then the Hemingway app are the ones I used to use all the time when I was working with neurodivergent young people.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
That's great.
Thanks, Nina. And Sarah, I know you were kind of following up on the back of Maddie's questions around safety, and do you feel that you've had your sense of that question covered, or do you want to come in and talk a bit more about what you were looking for? Covered, right, lovely. Does anyone else have any questions? Maddie, there were maybe a couple more that you didn't kind of cover previously.
Oh, please remind me. This is why, so yeah, I don't use AI very much, but I have many wee hacks, and one of them is to just note down questions as I think of, because I know I'll forget them.
Yeah, I was trying to keep a note. I've got something here about the kind of let me try that again, the reliability of Goblin or any other tool in terms of biases in the model, and you know, I guess that's quite important. Andy, what's
Yeah, I don't know. I noted that down when you were describing the Goblin AI app. I know you only had 2 minutes to summarize it, and obviously that isn't a lot. I honestly found that slightly terrifying. Oh God, sorry, everything's pinging at once. Because I look at, I mean, the models, like, give you a bit of context. Lex Scotland, our focus is everything to do with lived experience leadership. So we look at lived experience led decision making, policy strategy, etc. And where I know most about biases in AI tools is things like either being used as a recruitment filter or in police and criminal justice work.
Mm-hmm.
So I know how heavily decision making can be biased by existing biases in the data set. So yeah, I'm curious as to what more you know about Goblin in the terms of asking it to give the pros and cons, because those seem like very subjective things to me. And for me, that's the kind of thing, to be really honest, that's the kind of thing I would really want a human to be doing, not AI. Is that that feels like the very human decision, because for me, as a small social enterprise owner, I come into conflict quite a lot with, a lot of business advice. It's one of the reasons I love doing stuff with Social Enterprise Scotland. Is a lot of business advice. They would write up the pros and cons and make a completely different decision. I quite often make decisions that mean our business makes less profit because we are prioritizing the ethical or the vision and the purpose of our social enterprise over profit. and those seem like very human decisions. So I was just kind of curious as to what kind of frameworks Goblin uses, how it comes up with those pros and cons, how it makes those decisions, because that, yeah, not gonna lie, I felt kind of slightly sick when I heard that. I was like, oh my god, really? Are people actually doing that? Is that actually okay? How is that okay?
Well, I mean, some people believe in astronomy and use that to help make decisions. I think that
That's what I'm saying is, yeah, that's what I'm saying is that actually, when you're running a social enterprise, you know, those are very subjective decisions, and it seems to me that where AI is most useful, most recently I've been using it for data analysis. Great, fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
So that sort of pattern spotting, data analysis, spitting out, I give it a huge, great big spreadsheet of facts, and it says, actually, this, here are the patterns in the data. But then it's up to me as the human researcher to interpret those patterns. Whereas what you were suggesting Goblin was doing there was the interpretation.
Yeah, and again, so Goblin is a tool. I wouldn't recommend that you sort of live your life only based on what Goblin recommends. But often, if you've got a difficult decision or if you've got decision paralysis, then just chucking a load of information into Goblin, and it says, well, these are the pros, these are the cons. It's just a tool. I mean, you can treat it as
how I was just trying to understand a bit better how it does that. What kind of algorithms is it based on? What data sets is it based on? What can you set priorities? For example, can you set priorities to say, actually, this is our priority for this project, or these are our priorities for the business, or is it just a big wide pool of whatever's on Twitter and Elon Musk decided?
No, well, I mean, it's an LLM, so it draws from everything. But yeah, you can give it whatever inputs you want, so you can shape the process however you want.
But it is so it is drawing on broad, Twitter based and scraping data sets.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a large language model, so yeah,
okay,
everything.
Fair enough. Yeah, that won't be for us then.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Maddie. We've just got one more question, I think, from Karina. Hi, Karina.
Hello. Hi, everyone. It's not actually a question. I just want to make a couple of comments. So first of all, there's been a lot of chat about the GDPR aspect. So I'm a legal advisor, a business advisor. So my hackles immediately went up when we're talking about these sorts of things. And I actually share your concern, Maddie, when you talked about the Goblin and how that might work when it comes to, decisions, difficult decisions. So when you're using these tools, it can never replicate the advice of someone who has spent years and thousands of pounds learning their craft in an advice capacity. And otherwise, same as everybody here in the room has expertise, these tools, as useful as they are, I'm an ADHD, a founder-led social enterprise, also, an advisor, like I say, and I do use them as well. I use Otter, I use Copilot. I don't use ChatGPT, I don't love it. Personal opinion, but those, they are tools to be used, but they don't replicate the advice that you're going to get from somebody else and who's got that expertise in order to do that. And what worries me about it is that someone who's either facing a quick search on Goblin or a fee that's thousands of pounds, that's what worries me. So it's useful and these tools are brilliant, but the thing is they can't replace that expertise. And the other thing about the GDPR I just wanted to say is, if you work for an organization that you're not deciding about your privacy notice, about what data you process and all of the rest of it, you need to be, double checking that these things are dealt with any data that you're processing, if it's in this kind of the special category or not. You need to have a reason to process it. And not only do you need a reason, you also need to be able to communicate that reason in your policy and out with everything else, so that it's not that you can't do it, but you need a reason and you need that legal basis in order to do that. So if you need to create your own privacy policy around that, then the people whose data is being processed needs to know about that, and that needs to be communicated in a notice. So if you aren't in charge of those things, then those are things you need to raise with the people who are, and make sure that your privacy policies are relevant, up to date, and they're not just generated from ChatGPT. And that is all my comment, I
Absolutely.
promise.
Yeah, there was just a lawyer in the US who got in trouble for sending out ChatGPT documents instead of writing his own. So yeah, definitely don't do that. The professionals are professionals. Like I said, LLMs don't have anything behind the eyes. They just sound good. So yeah.
Great. Okay, thanks, Karina. Yeah, and we would heartily recommend Karina's services, particularly well, certainly from our point of view, we're constantly talking to social enterprises at all stages of development, and Karina's our go-to on the legal front for most things. So
because of burnout, I won't get back to you for at least 14 business days, but I'll get there, I promise.
Yeah, I thought it was quite ironic that the tool that's supposed to sort out your inbox is called SaneBox, because yeah, it's the complete opposite of how I feel about my inbox, which is insane. But okay, we've gone over. I'm terribly sorry as a host for allowing that, but I think it was a really useful and worthwhile conversation, and I think some really important points raised where AI can work and where maybe it does not work for people also, and for social enterprises. So just to say thank you very much to Andy for coming along, sharing your insight and expertise here. Thanks to you all for coming. We'll pop an email out to you later this afternoon with the presentation and potentially a couple more bits and pieces that I've got that may be useful for you also. And as ever, if you've got any questions, you can come back to us, and hope you enjoy the rest of your Tuesday. Thanks very much again. See you later. Bye-bye.